Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto x Link x Zelda x Saria? Part 1. Huge shout out to QB16 for this story. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. 6. 1 each of 3. Din. Faror. Nehru. Sightings of the past will guide you to the 6. 1 in the fires of the earth. 1 in the colossal basin. 1 in the forest of the ancients. 6 in all, 1 each of 3. 2 more. Daji and Shini. Those of twilight. Sightings of the future. 1 in the underground of darkness. 1 in the mounds of the desert. A mystical treasure of time. A dark mask of misfortune. A prophecy of a great war. Power, wisdom, and courage. Coming together as one. To break the endless cycle. To open a new world, one made whole beneath the 3. Naruto woke to the hush of a sky that was not a sky at all. The horizon folded back on itself like a ribbon of light, slow tides of color washing through a domed firmament. He stirred on cool stone. The air smelled like rain over hot sand, and somewhere, distant but steady, a heartbeat drummed through the plain beneath him. Finally, said a voice warm as a forge and twice as impatient. He turned his head. The woman standing nearest was tall and long-limbed, shoulders squared as if she wore battlefields like cloaks. Her hair, a rich russet tied high, fell in a thick tail to her waist. A red wrap had been knotted at her ribs and paired with a flowing skirt that moved when she breathed. Her eyes were embers and they fixed on him with frank appraisal. Din, said another, and her chiding was a smile and sound. The second woman was shorter, her poise exact. Waves of aqua hair framed a face of careful beauty, and the blue of her layered gown deepened toward the hem where gold filigree gathered the light. Our guest has crossed more than sea and sky to reach us. And survived the landing, added a third, lively as a breeze before rain. She leaned in with curious eyes the color of spring leaves, her knee-length green dress pinned at one shoulder with a simple clasp. I am Faror. Do you hurt anywhere? Naruto pushed himself to sitting. His body felt strange, light in the joints, quick in the hands, as if someone had turned down the weight of years and left only habit and scar memory. He looked at his fingers. Smaller than they should have been. 13, if he had to guess. He breathed out slow. I've been worse, he said, because it was true and because their eyes wanted honesty, not bravado. Where am I? In our domain, said the blue-haired one. I am Nehru. You fell through a snag in the outer streams, child of the elemental nations. There was apology in the title, and a touch of fondness that surprised him. We took you in. You made a little ruckus. That is an understatement, Din said, but the corner of her mouth softened. You cracked one of Faror's wind pads clean through. I'll mend it, Faror said, cheerful. Besides, he brought a message with him. Fractures are never accidents. Nehru's gaze held his. Hyrule is splintering. The flow of events has been cut by outside hands. When time frays, it bursts timelines that cannot hear the rest of the world. We cannot lay fingers upon them without unmaking what we once made. Someone meddled, Naruto said. He thought of Kaguya's shell on the moon, of doors to places that never should have opened, and of the way fate sometimes looped like a snare if no one cut it. Yes, Nehru said simply. There are paths by which the break can be healed. We cannot walk them. You can. Din set her hands on her hips and stepped close. Heat shimmered faintly from her skin. You won't be alone. Hyrule breeds heroes like mountains raise storms. One in particular bears the courage we set beneath the sky. He is young. Her eyes flicked down to him, amused. You match him now. More or less. Not by choice, Naruto muttered. The complaint lacked venom. He could already feel the utility of it. Smaller muscles, faster recovery, the easy balance of a body light on its feet. He met Din's ember gaze. If I'm our link, tell me how to pull. Naira lifted her hand and brushed his cheek with 2 fingers. Cool light blossomed, and for a heartbeat he felt wrapped in something like a memory of home, the smell of steam over tea, the hush of a library, the soft click of beads. When your need is great, call to me with your heart. My love becomes a ward that turns blades and dark magics. Din's palm pressed briefly to his shoulder. Fire ran down his spine without burning, a roiling warmth that pulled in his gut and settled there like a promise. When the tide of foes would drown you, call me. I will lend you flame that doesn't tire. Faror slid her fingers into his hand, quick and light. A playful gust curled under his feet and lifted his hair. When the walls are cruel or the path collapses, call and I'll fold the wind. It will carry you between danger and safety, if you are clever where you anchor it. Barriers burst and blink, Naruto said, mouth tilting. Named or not, the gifts fit neat into the jutsu-shaped spaces his training made in him. Nehru's expression sobered. There is more. The 6 you've heard whispered, and the 2 shrouded in twilight. Old powers and witnesses both. You will feel their echoes. Do not try to seize them. Let them show you their proper keepers. I'm not here to steal a legend, Naruto said. I'm here to make sure it can happen. Good, Din said, satisfied. Then go. The world tucked itself inside out. Wind whistled. Light closed like an eye. Naruto hit dirt on his shoulder, rolled, and came up crouched at the open gate of a bustling city. The guard at the arch had a genial face gone red from sun and boredom. Welcome to Castle Town, kid, he boomed before Naruto could fully stand. Kid. Naruto stared for half a heartbeat, then laughed once under his breath. Right. He dusted himself off and slipped into the throng. Castle Town was sound before it was sight. Vendors called over one another, praising apples so crisp they sang and cloth so fine it would shame a noble's mood. Hooves clattered. Somewhere a child's tin flute chased a melody and failed, earnest and off by a note every time. Whitewashed buildings hugged narrow streets, their upper stories leaning close like neighbors gossiping. Around him, Hylian's ears rose in graceful points, catching light when they turned their heads. He angled toward a shop window for a glimpse of himself, and found a looking-glass propped inside on a crate of combs. The reflection that peered back was wheat-haired and fox-bright, cheeks still too smooth, eyes a little too old to belong to the face they were set in. 13. Maybe 14 if he squinted. He sighed. The goddesses had reasons he wouldn't like. The shove, when it came, was clumsy and apologetic the way a boulder is apologetic to a hillside. Naruto rocked back a step and snapped his hands out to steady himself. The man who'd slammed into him was thick in the neck and shoulders, sweat beading where unshaven stubble met the collar of a stained tunic. Over one shoulder, a sack wriggled. Naruto's gaze tracked the bulge of fine fabric and the faint stamp in red thread near the tied mouth of the bag, a bird like fire in flight, under it 3 small golden triangles nested together. Watch it, the man growled, making his voice big for the crowd. Sure, Naruto said, and then he breathed once, dropped his weight to his back foot, and let his heel carry him up into a short, descending arc that collapsed the distance. His knee hit the man's sternum with a controlled thump that folded him without breaking him. Momentum did the rest. The man careened into a produce cart. Apples went everywhere in a bright rolling tide. The sack nearly hit the cobbles. Naruto snagged it mid-fall and set it carefully on a crate. The square held its breath. Then it exhaled in roused whispers. He untied the mouth of the sack. A girl no older than he was blinked up at him, hair as fair as ripe straw and eyes the blue of the lake in deep shade. Her dress was a careful cascade of violet tones clipping to pink at the hems, embroidered with the same firebird and the triad of gold. It's all right, Naruto said, gentling his voice. You're safe. Fear fled her eyes in 2 steps. First, recognition that the blade had missed. Second, stubborn indignation that it had been swung at all. She sat up and darted a look past him to where the kidnapper groaned amid apples and curses. Impa, she said, and there was relief there and a calculated calm, as if speaking the name would put a wall between her and the danger. A whisper of motion. The cool point at Naruto's throat arrived a blink later than his awareness that it was already there. He didn't turn. He could feel the woman at his back by the way the crowd ceased to exist where she stood. You won't get far with a hostage, she said. Her voice was that precise calm blades aspire to. Good news, Naruto answered evenly. I'm not a hostage. I'm the idiot who hates bullies. He lifted his hands, palms open. You'll find your kidnapper behind the apples. The knife eased. He's right, Impa, the girl said, already on her knees beside Naruto to peer into the sack as if confirming she hadn't lost a shoe. He stopped him. Forgive my haste, the woman said. The blade vanished. When she stepped into view, the crowd made a little more room without meaning to. She was taller than Naruto by a head and a half, skin pale as a winter moon and eyes an arresting crimson. Silver hair was pulled back into a tight tail that kept it from her face. Her clothing was fitted and functional, plates of blue and silver layered with a soldier's thought for movement. Impa, Naruto repeated, and inclined his head. Naruto. New in town. Her gaze flicked over him, not missing anything. You'll come with us. We will thank you properly and ask how you came to be here at exactly the wrong moment. One corner of her mouth tilted in something not entirely humorless. Or the right one. Guards arrived. The kidnapper went off in cuffs and defiance. Impa took the girl's hand and nodded Naruto along while the crowd parted. They moved through a gate of great timbers banded in iron, up a path where hedges had been coaxed into rounded shapes, then past 3 pairs of sentries in different halls whose stances were almost, but not quite, identical. Naruto's eyes counted seconds and angles without trying. The old habit of breaking a fortress into pieces for the sake of getting out alive was a comfort he didn't talk about. The castle's great doors opened on a hall that had learned to be impressive centuries ago. Banners in Hyrule's colors rose to vaults that made voices small. They crossed a floor pattern of pale and darker stone that came together in an emblem of 3 golden triangles meeting at their points. At the far end, a king and queen sat a little forward on their thrones, as if both were ready to stand if the moment asked. The queen's hair fell in a lighter shade than her daughter's, her features refined, the lines at her eyes soft from a life of smiling in the right places. The king was broad across the shoulders and wore his authority like steel beneath velvet, brown hair kept neat, eyes grave. The girl tugged loose from Impa and ran the last steps with care not to be scolded later. Mother. Zelda, the queen breathed, standing to fold the princess into a hug that put an arm around her shoulders and a palm on her hair, as if blessing and counting were the same gesture. The king's relief was a visible exhale. Naruto stopped where the patterned floor suggested he should and bowed. He felt the other presence in the room before he saw him. It tasted like hot iron and the shadow at noon when the sun hits a cliff. When Naruto straightened, his eyes found the tall man standing a little alone, as if he carried his own boundary with him. Dark skin, vivid orange hair drawn back from a sharply angled face, gold and black worked into a Gerudo warlord's finery. He watched Naruto with an interest that was open, unblinking, and wrong. Step forward, young man, the king said. The voice that addressed him could have commanded a hall of brawlers to sit and finish their soup. Naruto did, stopping where etiquette seemed to like. Your Majesty. My daughter says you kept her from harm. The king's gaze softened a fraction. Hyrule owes you thanks. Name a reasonable reward and it shall be yours. Naruto thought of complicated wishes and traps they hid. Then he thought of his real reason for being here and how all of this would spiral outward if he let it. Your Majesty, he said, careful, I have no family in this land and no coin to start with. I'll make my way. But since you asked for frankness, may I speak of your guard? The nearest soldier bristled. The king lifted one hand and the objection died without being born. You may, he said, intrigued despite himself. Naruto kept his tone plain and uninsulting. In the outer garden, sentries turn on a rhythm. Between hedges and the angle of the path, there's a blind triangle you could drive a hay cart through if you timed it. 2 halls use the same posted stance and distance. If I were a thief who knew how to move, I'd be in and out before anyone learned my name. You don't need more swords. You need better angles, a second beat between pairs to break symmetry, and fewer places where bushes stand taller than a man. Silence, and then the king laughed once. Not mocking. Pleased. You are an interesting boy, Naruto. Naruto shrugged, a little embarrassed. I grew up in a place where getting past people who wanted you to stop was a childhood game. It makes you notice doorways. I see no fair way to let service go unanswered, the king said after a beat. You say you have no coin and no people. Stay. There is room among the pages and wards. If you will take it, I would have you serve as my daughter's bodyguard. You see what others miss. I value that. I would be honored, Naruto said. He meant it. It put him close to where threads met. It gave him time. Impa's eyes narrowed, not in mistrust so much as re-evaluation. The Gerudo man smiled, slow and beautiful as a lion. Days settled with the weight of new routine. Morning bells took the chill off stone corridors. The castle woke in layers, kitchens first, then the yard where men and women took practice cuts at straw men and laughed through bruised knuckles, then quieter places where tutors unfolded maps. Zelda loved the garden best. Naruto learned that the first afternoon he was allowed to walk beside her without 3 other guards carving the air with their attention. The garden's hedges wore flowers in careful riots. Bees shouldered blossoms like polite drunks. A fountain shaped like a gentle-faced dragon poured a thin stream into a pool where bright fish turned lazy circles. Show me again, Zelda said, delighted enough to sound younger. Naruto set a leaf on the back of his hand. The body has lines that carry energy, he said, using simple words because simplicity made discovery sweeter. Breathe and notice how your chest rises. Feel the way your back and belly answer. Do that, but smaller. Like listening for footsteps under rain. Zelda's concentration gathered between her eyes. She breathed as he showed her. The leaf slid a fraction when her focus wobbled. Her mouth opened in a soft "oh," then pressed in again as she steadied it. The leaf stopped moving. Her face lit. Good, Naruto said. That's the start. Don't force. Guide. He kept the other things to himself. That chakra thrummed like a quiet drum in Zelda the way it did in people strong of heart. That Impa's energy was steel true and coiled. That the Gerudo's was steeped in summer heat, weighty and coiled in a different way. He thought of Farore's warning and did not reach. They walked the paths. Zelda pointed out a blue wagtail that had nested in a carved gutter, and told him in an earnest rush about old legends she loved more than the etiquette tutor's lessons. She asked about his home and stumbled across how to be polite about not knowing enough to even ask. Naruto told her as much as he could without tangling this world with his. He spoke of a village that had learned to live after war. Of friends who taught him how to hold people and be held without always looking over a shoulder. Her eyes softened at that, the sympathy of a girl who kept a kingdom's expectations in her pockets like stones. Thank you, she said later, leaf forgotten on her palm, cheeks warm. For saving me. And for this. It's nice to learn something because you're curious, not because someone expects you to know it. It's a good habit, he said. Curiosity saves heroes. She looked down quickly, a smile she didn't know how to manage yet tugging at her mouth. Heroes, she echoed, as if trying the word on and finding it both large and not entirely foreign. Naruto excused himself before dinner to visit the market and bring back something small. He was halfway to the gate when the feelings slid around him again, the soft pressure at the edge of awareness that meant someone comfortable in silence had chosen to share it with him. You have made the princess smile, Impa said from his left, not bothering to stand in shadows this time. Was that forbidden? Naruto asked lightly. It is rare, she said, and then after a pause, it is good. He glanced at her, curious despite himself. Up close, the discipline in the way she held herself read as kindness with sharp edges. You'll tell me if I step wrong, he said. I will, she said. And I will thank you when you step right. She tilted her chin toward the lower city. Do not be late. The queen wishes to speak with her daughter this evening. I'll be quick, he promised. Zelda waited with her mother in a sitting room that understood both comfort and politics. Cushions heaped tastefully. The windows framed the garden like a painting. The queen dismissed the handmaid with a nod and patted the space beside her. Zelda sat, hands smoothing her skirt for no reason but nerves. Naruto stood back where he could be present without intruding. You frightened me today, the queen said, not unkindly. And you handled yourself well. I was careless, Zelda admitted. Her mouth wanted to tremble. She refused it the satisfaction. I won't be again. I expect you to learn, the queen said. Not to pretend danger is not real. That is the difference between courage and stubbornness. Zelda breathed and nodded. I will learn. Her mother's smile warmed. Good. Then learn this as well. Men will bring gifts to your father who are not gifts at all. One of them watched you today with a gaze too hungry to be respectful. Zelda's hands tightened. Ganondorf, she said quietly. The queen's eyes turned thoughtful. He is a king among the Gerudo. That makes him neither friend nor enemy by itself. But a woman knows when a gaze weighs her as coin. He has the patience of a serpent sunning on stone. Naruto said nothing. He watched the way worry pulled Zelda's shoulders in and stored the image alongside the layout of the castle. Both were maps, and both mattered. When they were dismissed, Impa fell into step with them in the hall. There will be training, she said without preamble. For both of you. Zelda, your blade and bow. Naruto, your eyes and the shape of our walls. I want to see every path you think a thief would take. Tomorrow? Zelda asked, already braced for dawn. Impa's mouth twitched. Tonight. Dangers are not fond of calendars. Zelda groaned very softly. Naruto grinned and bowed. After you, my princess. She huffed, and he caught the spark that had been missing from her earlier fear. Good. Sparks made fires that kept people warm. Night gathered over Castle Town in blues and thin grays. Lanterns woke in the streets like small stars. In the training yard, Impa set targets at uneven distances and made Zelda shoot until her shoulders burned and her grip never lied. Naruto watched her stance, corrected small things with quiet touches and words that made sense to bodies. When she flagged, he told a story from home about a mentor who used to make him climb a tower because someday he might need to fall from one and not die. Did you? Zelda asked, panting, attempting a joke. Twice, he said, deadpan, and she laughed until she had to lean on the bow. When they were done, Zelda went to wash and sleep. Impa remained with Naruto, the yard empty but for them and the smell of trampled grass. You look at our castle as if it were a puzzle box, she said. It is, he said. Every place is. The trick is learning which hidden panels open to kindness, and which open to knives. Ganondorf is a knife, Impa said, not as speculation but as a thing her bones knew. But blades can be useful when you decide where they cut. Naruto thought of the prophecy that had ridden him across the broken seam between worlds. 6 and twilight. A treasure that sang time. A mask that wanted a face. Courage, wisdom, power, and the habit they had of finding each other whether or not anyone invited them to dinner. He thought of a ranch girl with a song, a kokiri child with a fairy, a river princess whose eyes would be like water at noon, a desert woman with a laugh that hid steel, a forest friend who would not forget, and a princess who had learned how to steady a leaf with breath. Then we decide early, he said quietly. And we prepare the people who will hold the things that matter. Impa considered him for a long breath. You are young, she said. And not. A simple truth. Very well, bodyguard. We prepare. She walked him once more through the halls in darkness. He counted, and he listened, and he learned where the castle itself creaked in cool night air. By the time he slept, He had the beginning of a map that would matter when the first blow landed. A month slipped by, and Castle Town began to feel less like a maze and more like a rhythm Naruto could hum under his breath. He learned which baker sold honeyed twists just before dawn, and which guard on the western wall liked to trade riddles at change of watch. He also learned where Zelda went when the castle felt heavy. Her garden wore the afternoon light like a shawl. The hedges here weren't trimmed into soldiers. They were allowed to spill over and soften the stone. Beds of rare blossoms bowed on thin stems, and the fountain's thread of water sounded like a secret whispered and kept. Zelda sat on the low rim with her hands folded, not the careful court fold but the way a girl clasps herself when she is keeping something from spilling. "Hey, Zeldaheim," Naruto called gently as he came through the arch. "Why the long face?" "It's nothing," she said, and the way she rounded the word made it obvious it was something. He circled to face her, leaned a shoulder to the warm stone, and waited. "You know I'm your friend," he said. "You can tell me anything." She exhaled, cheeks puffing very slightly. "There's a festival in town tonight," she admitted. "Lanterns on the river, costumes, dancing. Impa is in Kakariko, and after what happened a month ago my parents won't let me go unless they escort me themselves." "And royal processions," Naruto said, "aren't exactly the way to enjoy fried dough and bad singing." Her mouth quirked. "No." "What about a guard?" He tried. "I was with a guard when I was taken," she said, eyes flicking up and away. "Mother and father have long memories." Naruto nodded. "Fair." Then he grinned, all bright mischief. "So go with me." She blinked. "What?" "You said you need someone they trust," he said. "They hired me to be your shadow. I've also demonstrated an ability to discourage riff-raff." He spread his hands. "Let's ask." It took precisely one insult to get the permission they needed. A newly posted soldier, broad, loud, and eager to prove himself, snorted that a boy was no bodyguard. Naruto offered the fastest way to settle the matter, a friendly bout, 10 heartbeats, no injuries. He used the man's weight and pride against him and put him on his back without so much as scuffing the yard dust. The king coughed into his fist to smother a smile. The queen raised a brow at the sprawled soldier, then at Naruto, and said to Zelda, "Be home before the last lantern burns low." By twilight, Castle Town had become a storybook. Ropes of paper light stitched streets together, each lantern a soft globe that pulled faces out of the dark. Musicians tuned on corners. Somewhere a drum kept the night's steady heartbeat. Naruto and Zelda moved with the crowd's tide. He bought her a skewer of candied plums that stained her lips pink. She bought him a carved wooden whistle that made a dove sound if you blew it just right. When a chill crept up the alleys, he shrugged off his jacket and settled it over her shoulders without asking. She drew it tighter and smiled into the collar, as if it still held the warmth of a private joke. "Thank you," she said, voice small in a way that was not weak, only honest. "Naruto." "Yeah, Zeldaheim?" "Promise me." She swallowed. "Promise we'll always be friends." He didn't make light of it. He hooked an arm around her and pulled her in until the promise could be spoken close. "A promise of a lifetime," he said. "I don't make the other kind." The night ended as lanterns drifted on the river like a trail of captive stars. When he walked her back through the sleeping castle, she squeezed his hand once at her door, quick and fierce, then vanished inside. The days that followed moved too fast. The queen's cough worsened, and no poultice or prayer softened it. She summoned Zelda and Naruto to a quiet room that smelled of lavender and wax, the curtains drawn to turn the afternoon into a tender twilight. Even now, dressed simply, she carried herself with the ease of a woman who had learned to mend a nation by first mending small things, a torn hem, a frightened child's worry. "Thank you for being my daughter's friend," she told Naruto when he bowed. "You will hear many thanks in your life. Take this one into your bones." "No thanks are needed," he said softly. "Please keep your strength." "I will keep what I can," she said, and her smile made the words brave. She beckoned Zelda closer and cradled her cheek. My bright one, she whispered, I am sorry for the times I made you a princess when you most needed a mother. Zelda pressed her lips together and nodded once, hard. The goddesses came to me in a dream, the queen continued. They placed words in my keeping. 3 youths with hair like sunlight, bearers of great power, great wisdom, and great courage will join with 6 chosen of the elements to save Hyrule from the son of the desert. 2 of those youths will stand as pillars for each other. The 3 must unite their strength as the first of 3 great shadows draws near. She reached beneath the coverlet and produced a small blue instrument. It gleamed as if it remembered every song it had ever sung. The emerald of the forest, the ruby of fire, the sapphire of water, she murmured, and then, in a voice that seemed to come from farther away and deeper still, the moonstone of spirit and the amethyst of shadow. Along with the sacred treasure, they will open the door behind which rests the weapon the hero of time must wield. She laid the ocarina in Zelda's hands, and Zelda's breath hitched. This has passed from mother to daughter, the queen said. Now it is yours. Learn it. Guard it. Let it carry the right songs to the right ears. I won't fail you, Zelda said. The words shook but did not break. I won't fail Hyrule. Naruto bowed his head. If it takes days, weeks, or years, he added, I'll bring back what we need, and the people we need. You have my word. Then go with my blessing, the queen said, and in that moment she looked neither ill nor tired but very, very proud. He left the following dawn with a small pack, a coil of rope, a slingshot he didn't much need but someone else might, and more rupees than he'd expected, the king's quiet way of keeping a promise without turning it into a parade. Zelda saw him to the gate with the hood pulled up against the wind and pressed a sealed letter into his hand for a friend we haven't met yet. He tucked it safely against his heart. The field at night had its own rules. When the sun slid and the horizon went blood and gold, the soil grew restless. Bones clawed their way up through the turf, skulls too large for their spindled bodies, jawbones grinning around silence. Stall children. Naruto didn't bother drawing steel. He planted his heel in the first one's skull and kicked the thing apart in a clean scatter of bone, then laughed because sometimes joy was how you answered fear. When 3 more rose, he clapped, and 20 shadow copies of himself leapt out of the dark, hit like a falling wall, and left the path a mess of harmless pieces. Behind him, a high, frightened whinny. He turned. A foal, all knobby knees and a white blaze down her nose, had followed him far past where any sensible animal should be. Her coat was a rich burnished chestnut, more dust than dawn. She nosed his pack as if checking it for apples. Hey there, he said, voice going automatic gentle. You're a brave one. He tugged a carrot free and held it out on his palm. She snuffled, took it carefully, and butted his shoulder in thanks. Where did you wander from, girl? He asked. She flicked an ear and began to walk east, pausing every few steps to make sure he followed. He did. By the time the biggest style child of the night hauled itself out of the ground near a fence, 3 times the size of the others and annoyed about it, Naruto was already moving. Big fella, huh? He said, and then the field bloomed with copies again. They swarmed, laughed, and a moment later there was nothing left but a ring of disturbed earth. The ranch gates loomed out of the dark, comforting as a lullaby. He slipped inside on quiet feet and found a warm stall. The foal curled up near him as if they'd been doing this all their lives. Epona! Epona! The shout woke him at first light. He rubbed his eyes, yawned, and shuffled out with straw still in his hair. The foal startled and then pricked her ears toward the voice, delighted. So your name's Epona, Naruto said. And I think someone's been worried. A girl ran up the lane, skirts hitched to keep them out of the mud. Her hair, an easy, honest red, caught the sun. Her eyes were clear sky. She dropped to her knees and threw her arms around the foal's neck with a sound that was nearly a sob, nearly a laugh. There you are, she scolded into the white blaze. You can't just go adventuring without me. Naruto grinned. Found her wandering out by the field. She found me, more like. The girl stood and brushed at her apron, cheeks pink with relief. Thank you? I'm Malin. This is my father's place, Lon Lon Ranch. Naruto, he said. Happy to help. Malon's smile had the brightness of someone who made other people's days better without trying. If you ever want milk that'll shame a hot day, she said, come by. We'll set you right. The smile faltered a fraction. My mother used to say that. She taught me a song for Epona. If I sing it, she comes, no matter where she's gotten to. I'm sorry about your mother, Naruto said quietly. He knew how grief left a house with rooms that didn't open the same. It's all right. Malon stroked Epona's nose. She's in the kind parts of everything. Hey, he said after a beat, I'm looking for Kokiri Forest. Do you know the way? Malon squinted toward the horizon. Northwest of here, about half a day if you've got good boots. Look for a fallen tree like a giant laid down to nap and never got up. Thanks, he said. That's exactly the sort of direction I can use. Her father, Talon, insisted on a game before he let Naruto go because that, apparently, was the law of this land. If you met a traveler, you challenged him to catch your chickens. Naruto corralled 3 cuckoos in less than half a minute by letting them run where they wanted to, then being there first. My word, you've got an eye, Talon marveled, presenting a bottle with a flourish. Lon Lon milk. Finest there is. Naruto took it with a bow. I'll drink to your hospitality. Talon eyed him, mischief creasing his face. What say you to marrying my daughter, then? I'd say yes, Naruto deadpan, but I have a feeling she'd skin us both alive. Talon's laughter boomed off the rafters. You're not wrong. By noon, the ranch had shrunk behind him and the world had changed shade. The Kokiri Bridge was as Malon promised, an old giant's fallen rib. Beyond it, the air cooled and deepened. Light filtered through leaves and moving coins. Huts grown from living trees circled the glade like a ring of listening friends. Fairies darted, chiming. Children in green tunics and leafy dresses froze as one at the sight of a stranger with round ears. Hello, Naruto said, raising a hand. Monster! A blonde girl shrieked, and bolted. Panic skittered through the clearing like a thrown pebble through pigeons. Get the deca nuts! Get the sticks! The great Mito will protect us. A boy barreled out with a wooden sword held with all the seriousness in the world. He was broader than the others and red-haired, cheeks flushed with very real fear made into bravado. Say your prayers, fiend, he declared. I, Mito, will. With a wooden sword? Naruto asked, then regretted the bite in it as soon as the boy's jaw set. He sidestepped the clumsy lunge, caught the back of Mito's tunic, and redirected him neatly into the shallow pond rather than onto the roots. The splash startled everyone into silence. Enough, said a voice from the walkway above, calm as shade. A girl with short emerald hair hopped down the last step and landed light. Her green eyes took Naruto in and didn't find what she'd expected, but didn't find a threat either. He's not attacking you. Mito sputtered, then caught sight of who had spoken and swallowed a complaint. Saria, he muttered, dripping. Naruto spread his hands. I come in peace, he said, and made the words very plain. My name's Naruto. I'm from Castle Town. I'm here to ask the great Deku Tree for guidance. A few Kokiri peeked out from behind barrels. A very round boy whispered, he talks polite for a monster. Saria's mouth tilted. He's not a monster, she said. And even if he were, we have manners. She turned to Naruto. I am Saria, she said, with the calm of someone older than she looked. If you were unkind, the forest would have told me before you reached the bridge. She glanced at Mito. Go put on dry clothes, please. Mito scuffed away, sword wobbling. Saria gestured, and Naruto followed her along a path knotted with roots toward the vast trunk at the glade's edge. The great Deku Tree rose out of the earth like the memory of a mountain. When it spoke, the leaves trembled as if a breeze had found them. In the vast, deep forest of Hyrule, long have I served as guardian spirit, the voice said, so old it bent the ear toward listening. Children of the forest live beneath my boughs. Each has a fairy to guide and keep them. The great face in the bark seemed to turn its attention, if attention could be a weight you felt and not a look you met. You are not of this world. No, Naruto said simply. I come with a message and a purpose. Zelda of Hyrule trusted me with both. Outside hands have tugged at time. I'm here to help the heroes succeed where the path has been made cruel. The forest exhaled. Truth, the great Deku Tree said, and the word hummed. Courage not loud but steady. Wisdom borrowed and grown. Power that knows the cost of itself. A low sound like a chuckle moved through the roots. You may stay. Learn our paths. Keep your hands open. The bark face gentled. The fate of Hyrule will rest on shoulders that have not yet stepped here. But every hero who climbs must find a rung waiting. Naruto bowed, sincerity bending him deep. Thank you. When they turned back, Saria walked beside him with easy balance, as if roots rose to meet her feet. Sorry about Mito, she said. He's loud because he's scared sometimes. He loves this place the way a dog loves a door it guards. I've known boys like him, Naruto said. They get better if someone lets them. You sound like you've been a someone for a lot of someones, Saria said, amused. Sometimes, he admitted. Back in the village, caution had thawed to curiosity. A brave Kokiri with an overlarge cap asked if people outside the forest really slept under the sky. Another offered Naruto a Deku stick as if arming him with a priceless spear. He accepted the gifts and questions with the gravity they deserved, which won him more friends than jokes would have. Saria climbed a ladder and motioned for him to follow. He went up after her and stood where the whole glade spread like a map. We watch from here, she said. You can see trouble come long before it arrives. Good place for a slingshot, Naruto said, and tugged his from his belt. He weighed it, then offered it, but first. I don't need it much. But someone careful could do a lot of good with it. Saria's eyes warmed. I'll keep it, she said. And I'll make sure it ends up with the right hands when the time is right. Perfect, he said. They spent the afternoon in small practical work. Naruto showed two Kokiri how to tie a rope so it would hold a swinging child without biting the bark. Saria showed him the quick ways between roots that made strangers trip. They traded stories the way people do when they have decided, without saying it, to be friends. When the light slanted gold and the forest began to smell of cool water and crushed leaves, Saria leaned on the rail and looked toward the deeper trees. Sometimes I feel like the wind is practicing saying a name, she said, almost to herself. It's not here yet. But it will be. Naruto didn't ask the name. He only nodded. When it arrives, he said, I'll be where I should be. So will you. She smiled sidelong. You sound very sure. I've learned to trust good places and the people who keep them, he said. This is a good place. That night, in the hush under the great Deku Tree's boughs, Naruto lay awake and listened to the forest breathe. Somewhere far off, a ranch girl sang a tune to a foal with a white blaze. Somewhere under a different sky, a desert wind rehearsed a king's ambition. In the castle, a princess practiced a song on a blue ocarina until the notes settled into her fingers. And in a corner of the world not far from where he lay, the path of a boy and a fairy turned toward the forest. Naruto didn't reach for the thread. He only made sure the rung beneath the boy's feet would hold when the time came. The click came from the ceiling. Naruto's hand was already up when the white sculpture dropped, a hard, bony knot with legs like hooked wire and a belly mark shaped like a glaring skull. The torchlight threw its shadow big as a hut across the ribbed wall. It snapped as it came, then swung on a line of silk to rake at their faces. Back! He barked. Link slid a heel and brought the little Kokiri blade up with both hands. The skull spider shell would laugh off a straight cut, but it had to show its soft underside to strike. Naruto feinted right, quick and small, and the creature twisted to follow. Link's eyes narrowed. He ducked under a tangle of legs and drove the point up into the pale seam. The blade bit. The sculptula spasmed and went slack, dropping with a thud that shook dust from a webbed beam. Good, Naruto said, breath even. They make you look up so you forget the floor. Link nodded once, the ghost of a grin there and gone. Water dripped steadily from somewhere deeper. The air down here had changed, colder, sapless, carrying a sourness that didn't belong in a living tree. They moved. Navi's glow skimmed ahead in quick scouting arcs. Twice she pinged a warning and Link's shield took the slap of a Dekubaba's jaw. Twice Naruto's hand blurred and a kunai flicked out, pinning the plantings open maw to the earth long enough for Link to lop it clean and harvest a hard, serviceable stick from its stiffening stalk. When the path forked, webs choked one way and a narrow ledge spiraled the other, slick with condensation. Ledge, Naruto decided. Webs can wait. Halfway up, two Walchulas worked a lazy patrol across the climb. Their shells gleamed like bone in the torchlight. Their legs picked at the bark. Link leaned into the trunk and waited, patient as moss. When the nearest spider turned away, he went hand over hand past the blind side and hauled himself up to the next lip. Naruto followed with a low, easy grace and offered a palm for the last step. Link took it without looking, already marking the next jump. At the top, the chamber opened into a gallery ringed by more webs and a single locked door with a sunken eye of a switch beside it. Navi hovered near the switch, bobbing. Fire, she guessed. Or lightning, Naruto said. He twirled a baba stick and touched it to his torch. The pitch caught with a hungry sound. Save the fancy for when we must. Link bolted, vaulted a gap in the floor and landed light. He jammed the burning stick into a waiting sconce. Flame chased the wall in a low, eager ribbon until it kissed the nearest web. Silk curled and vanished in fast, curling tongues. The door's dull eye blinked to life and the lock thunked open. Beyond lay a short hall, then a round room alive with skittering. Eggs, Link realized, brown, ridged, clustered like rotten fruit across the ceiling. He swallowed and set his feet. She knows we're here, Naruto said. Make it fast. A Deku scrub popped from its hole and spat a nut the size of a thumb at Link's chest. The shot clanged off his shield. Link rushed. The scrub squealed and sank, then popped up again to stammer in a rush, Forgive! Forgive! Underlings of the Queen fear light. Stun the eye. That's all I know. Go, Naruto said. They returned to the gallery, dropped through a second web to the lower floor, then to a third, Naruto melting the strands with a brief hiss of blue-white lightning that left the air sharp and acrid. The final fall plunged them into the core, a cavern wide and tall as a temple, walls pulsing faintly with the last of the great Deku tree's life, a ring of tilted roots like ribs around a circular floor. Silence. Then the sound of something huge unhooking itself from above. Queen Goma's eye opened first, one terrible, lidless yellow, slit-pupilled and hungry. The rest followed, the bulk of a massive carapace mottled in the colors of mold and old blood, legs that could split a man, mandibles wet with acid. Navi flared bright on instinct. Link! Don't be afraid, Naruto said low. I'll give you the opening. The queen dropped like a stone, legs splayed to scissor flesh from bone. Link rolled under the strike, came up on a knee, and slung a Deku seed. It cracked on the pupil with a wet pop. Goma reared, shrieking, blinded for a heartbeat. Naruto hit her shell at an angle, not to break it but to move her. Force ran from his shoulder through his hips and into the blow. The impact staggered her sideways. Left knee, he snapped. Link slid in, feet set perfect, and his blade punched clean into the joint at the base of a leg. Cartilage parted. Queen Goma stumbled. She spat acid in a ragged arc. Naruto swept an arm and a burst of wind skated the spray off course, hissing as it ate a scar into the stone. She scuttled up the wall with a speed that made the breath catch in Link's throat. Up, until she hung from the far side of the vault and her abdomen began to heave. Eggs, Navi warned, horrified. Bring her down, Naruto said. He cupped a palm. Chakra chirped into bright, stitched lightning and leapt like a thrown snare. It struck high, searing a line along the wall. The queen flinched. Link took the cue and planted his feet, aimed, and fired 3 seeds in a clean rhythm. Talk, talk, talk. The third burst right on the pupil again. Goma shrieked, clutch broken, and fell. She hit hard. Link was already moving. He saw only the eye and the memory of the scrub's stammered advice. His world narrowed to the ring of his breath inside his chest, the weight of the Kokiri sword in his hand, the yellow disc fixed like a moon. He jumped, both hands on the hilt, and landed the point dead center with a cry that tore his throat. The queen spasmed, grabbed wildly, caught Link's tunic and flung him aside. He hit the ground, armor ringing, breath gone. Naruto was there before the second toss, heel cutting across a joint. Bone cracked. The great body lurched. Now! Naruto shouted, and Link forced his legs to answer. He rolled, grabbed his sword where it skittered, and came up into a cut that sliced across the damaged pupil. The scream started high and ended as a wet gurgle. Goma shuddered. Her legs thrashed, then folded. The light died out of the eye like a candle pinched between fingers. Silence came back in a rush. Link swayed and dropped to a knee. Naruto offered a hand. Link took it and let himself be hauled upright. Good, Naruto said again, and this time the word warmed. You listened. You took the shot that mattered. Navi hovered close to Link's cheek, her glow soft and frantic. Are you hurt? Link, answer me. I'm fine, he lied, and then admitted, breathless, mostly fine. Out, Naruto said, because the air was changing. The roots around the chamber's rim were moving, straining. High above, a seam in the bark widened, and sunlight reached down like a rope. They didn't wait for a ladder. Naruto scooped Link by the waist and jumped, catching a raising root like a moving stair. 3 steps, 4, and then the two of them were in the meadow again with the grass bending in the morning wind and the great canopy stirring as if with relief. The great Deku Tree's voice filled the glade, tired and vast. Well done, young ones. Thou hast succeeded most admirably. Link straightened despite the ache in his ribs. We broke the curse, he said, the words half a question. The Deku Tree's leaves shivered. The rod is halted, but the wound remains. I will not go back to what I was. Link's mouth opened, shut. But we... Hear me, the guardian said, and his tone gentled. As I was consumed, I felt the will that drove the parasite. There is a man who wears the sun of the desert in his hair and thirst in his heart. He seeks to lay hand upon the Triforce, the sacred relic wrought when Din, Nehru, and Pharaoh made this world. Naruto glanced at Link and answered the confusion in his eyes. 3 golden triangles, he said softly. Power, wisdom, courage. They answer what you already are. A pure heart might make a world of light, the Deku Tree rumbled. A crooked one will make a prison. Hyrule stands at the edge of a choice. Link's hands tightened on the little sword. I can't fight a king, he said, the truth raw in it. Not alone. You are not alone, Naruto said quietly, setting his palm on Link's shoulder. I came because the path was broken. I'll stand with you as long as the path needs. It is as he speaks, the guardian agreed. And there is more. The question that gnaws at thee, child, ask it. Link swallowed. I'm not a Kokiri, am I? The words were hardly sound. A breath like wind in winter boughs. Nay. Thy blood is Hylian. In a time of war, thy mother fled to the forest with thee in her arms. She left thee with me and returned to the turmoil beyond the trees. Thou hast grown because that is what men do. A pause, fond and aching. And because thou wert meant to walk beyond this glade. Link stood straight, eyes wet and fierce. Then tell me where to go. To Hyrule Castle Town, the Deku Tree said. Seek the Princess of Destiny. Seek also the Outlander whose courage burns like a red dawn. He will be thy pillar, and thou his. Together with others yet unmet, ye shall gather the tokens that open the locked door of the ages. Light broke in the air before them and settled into Link's hands as a gem, a great emerald set in gold in the shape of the Kokiri's sign. It was cool and strangely heavy, like a thought you could hold. The Kokiri's emerald, the Deku Tree said. Guard it well. Now go. And do not look back. Link saluted, because he didn't know what else to do that felt big enough. I'll make it matter, he said hoarsely. Naruto. Navi. The old voice softened. Goodbye. They turned. They walked. Behind them, the sound of wood failing was not a crack but a long, sad sigh as bark darkened and a great life slipped down into its roots. Saria waited at the village's edge where the path narrowed between two old stones. She already knew, the way people know when the world becomes a little smaller in one direction and larger in another. Her eyes were bright and wet and very steady. You're leaving, she said. We are, Link answered, swallowing. I'm sorry. I'm not, Saria said, and smiled like a brave person. I always knew you would. The forest keeps children safe. It doesn't keep them forever. Link blinked fast. I'll come back. I know. She pressed a small wrapped bundle into his hands. Take this. He peeled the cloth back. A simple tan ocarina nestled inside, worn smooth where fingers had loved it. He looked up, startled. Saria, I can't. You can, she said. They say it's an instrument for nobles and knights. I think it's for anyone who needs to carry a song far. Play it when you need to remember that you can come home. She pulled him into a hug. He hugged back hard, and Navi's light bobbed close like a blessing. Saria turned to Naruto, 100 things in her face. Watch him, she said at last soft. He'll go straight at danger like a deer at a stream. I will, Naruto promised. He drew her into a quick, tight embrace. She smelled like leaves warmed by sun. And you watch yourself. Teach Mito how to listen. He'll be useful if someone gives him a job. She laughed wetly. You've only been here a month and you're already making assignments. Bad habit, he said. I'll bring better ones next time. See that you do. They left the shadows of the trees and stepped into the wide brightness of Hyrule Field. The grass hissed around their boots. Far away, Castle Town's walls shone pale in the morning. They made good time. Link walked a little ahead, as if his feet understood that today he belonged to the road. Naruto led him, keeping half an eye on the sky's angle and the way the wind shifted. At midday, they rested near a slow stream. Link turned the ocarina over in his hands and tried a few tentative notes. The tune that came out was clumsy and true. By late afternoon, the walls were near enough to count the stones. A familiar ranch wagon rattled along the road toward the gate. Malin stood at the back with her hands on her hips, hair like an easy flame, scolding a cuckoo with the fondness of someone who knows exactly why it misbehaves. Link's step hitched, then steadied. Naruto hid a smile and raised a hand in greeting. Savoy buns at the square before sundown, Naruto said casually as they fell in behind the cart. We'll get 2. Heroes eat. Link made a thoughtful sound that might one day become a joke. 3, he said. Deal. Behind them, deep in the forest, a green place grieved and then grew quiet, holding its breath for the next song. Ahead, within the castle, a girl practiced on a blue ocarina until the notes lay obedient and bright under her fingers. And somewhere beyond the far heat shimmer, a king of the desert watched the road and smiled a beautiful smile that didn't touch his eyes. The wheels of fate had started. Naruto adjusted his pack and matched his stride to Link's. All right, he said, to the world and to himself. Let's keep them turning the right way. The palace guard did their usual slow pirouette of duty, boots on stone, eyes unfocused, hands resting easy on spears. Naruto had been watching them since he'd first been hired as Zelda's shadow. The patterns never changed, and that, more than any locked door, was the invitation. He slipped between 2 patrol routes with Link and Navi at his heels, a ghost thread through the careful hedges, then paused with one palm open in a small, wait gesture. A pair of sentries traded jokes at the elbow of the corridor and laughed at the same place they always laughed. Naruto counted 5 heartbeats and moved, rolling his weight along the outside of his feet to make his steps small and honest. They stepped through the ivy-sleeved arch into the private garden. Zelda, sitting on the low edge of the fountain where the dragon's gentle stream fell, jerked at the sound of feet and half rose. Sunlight caught the blue of her dress and the plate at her shoulder. She couldn't make out their faces from the shade, not until Naruto lifted a hand in greeting. "Naruto, you've returned." "Just like I promised," he said, and crossed the little square of flagstones to her. The gap between them closed as if the garden itself moved to make it happen. "I've missed you," she said into his chest when he pulled her in, voice light and earnest at once. "And I you," he said, and let his chin rest on her hair for the length of a shared breath. Above them, a small blue light hovered and bobbed. "They're very close," Navi observed in the tone of someone narrating to herself and not to the entire courtyard. "It's actually cute." They eased apart, both smiling and both pretending not to notice they were still holding each other's forearms longer than a strict reading of etiquette required. "Is that the one from my dreams?" Zelda asked, eyes cutting to the boy at Naruto's shoulder. Her voice went careful and wondering. Naruto nodded. "This is Link. He came from the Kokiri forest." Link bowed a little awkwardly, one hand touching the hilt of the small sword at his back because the gesture felt right. "We brought the spiritual stone of the forest," he said, opening his palms so the green gem could take the light. "The great Deku Tree said I'd find what I'm meant to do if I came here." Zelda's face sobered with the weight of a story she had held alone too long. "Then I should tell you everything." She glanced toward the high window set into the keep wall. "I've had dreams for a year now. Storm clouds over Hyrule. Then a ray of light out of the forest, someone holding a green, shining stone, with a fairy beside him. The light cuts the clouds." Her fingers curled at her sides. "A prophecy, I think. And it fits an older legend." She told it the way she'd learned it, voice strengthening as the phrases found their proper order. "The three who made the world and hid the Triforce. The grand of wished for righteous or evil heart. The temple of time built by the sages to keep the sacred realms safe. The door of time sealed until 3 spiritual stones and the royal treasure could coax it open. The ocarina of time." Link listened with his whole body. He wasn't a boy who interrupted. Naruto watched Zelda's face while she spoke and thought, not for the first time, how courage could be quiet and wisdom could be kind. "One more thing," Zelda said at last. She gestured toward the window cut into the stone, low enough that a child could peer through if he stood on his toes. "Before you came I was spying. There is another figure from my dream. The dark clouds." She bit her lip and then lifted her chin, decided. "Look!" Naruto glanced at Link and they went together. The hall beyond was full of conversation, scribes with tablets, a minister gesturing over a map, but none of that mattered. The man at the far end of the chamber bent the air around him the way heat bends the road before noon. Tall, shoulders straight beneath a black and gold mantle, hair the color of a banked fire. His eyes turned unhurriedly toward the window as if he could feel them watch him. "Ganondorf," Zelda said softly. "King among the Gerudo. First male born to their tribe in an age." She swallowed. "Father says alliances will hold. He thinks I've let my lessons run away with my imagination." "He's the one," Link said, and didn't know how he knew it, only that the sight of that gaze found the old raw place in his chest where fear and a strange, stubborn defiance slept side by side. Naruto did not pretend politeness for this. "It's in him," he said. "Something hungry and patient. He'll keep every promise he can twist and every treaty he can hollow out. He wears respectability like armor." He exhaled through his nose. "The king's not wrong about the value of an alliance. He's wrong about snakes." Zelda made a small, unhappy sound and nodded once, as if that settled something inside her. "Then help me stop him," she said. "Help us. I can keep the ocarina safe. You have the emerald. Fire and water remain, and more than that, I think." She hesitated. "My mother used to speak of other old stones. But to open the door, the 3 are needed." "You expect me to say no?" Link said, and Zelda's laugh came out like relief. Thank you, she said, then looked at the courtyard gate as if hearing movement before it came. Impa will take you out by the safe way. And she wanted to teach you something before you go. Impa stepped from the shadow of the arch, not appearing so much as arriving the way a conclusion arrives at the end of an argument. She inclined her head to Naruto. It has been some time, Naruto of the Kitsune. And to you, Impa of the Shika, he answered, a trace of a grin in it that she returned with the smallest quirk at the corner of her mouth. She turned to Link. You've made a choice, she said, not asking. Good. The road will be long and unkind. We take what kindness we can at the start. She drew a short ocarina from within her cloak, simple tan clay, and handed it to Link. There is a lullaby that belongs to the royal house. It opens doors that respect that blood, and it steadies frightened hearts. Listen. She raised her fingers and hummed the intervals before she played them, and then gave the notes to the instrument. They went into the garden and settled like a benediction. Link watched her hands, watched the small changes of pressure, and then put the ocarina to his mouth and found the melody. The second time he played it, the air moved a little, as if in recognition. Good, Impa said. Remember it. The song will vouch for you when a paper cannot. She tipped her head toward the distant peak that stabbed the sky. Death Mountain. The Gorons keep the Stone of Fire. Go to my village first, Kakariko at the mountain's foot. Speak to the people. Learn the path's moods before you walk it. She tossed a deckanut to the flagstones. Light flared and was gone, and so was she. Show off, Naruto said fondly to the empty air, and Zelda's laugh flustered itself into a blush. Come back, she said, fingers squeezing Link's just once, and then Naruto's. Both of you. With the stones. We will, Link said, and meant it with the stubbornness of a promise made to a dying father, a friend at a forest's edge, and a girl at a fountain. They took the Sheikah steps out and crossed the field while the sun pulled itself higher. Kakariko greeted them with a newness it was proud of, laundry strung like flags between houses, a well with clean stones, a woman with sturdy arms bargaining over a basket of eggs. The guard at the gate was a talker, loud and friendly, who introduced himself as Saburo and informed them the village would be bustling any day now, oh yes, any day, just you see, and had they met Damp yet, the great keeper who slept when the sun did and walked when it didn't? We'll make a note, Naruto said, steering Link gently away before Saburo could invite them to repaint the fence. The trail to Death Mountain had a gate and a man who liked rules. He took Zelda's letter with a great flourishing seriousness, squinted at the seal, read the first line aloud, then dissolved into a laugh so loud nearby Kuko's fluffed and complained. What game is the princess playing now? He chortled. Ah, well, who am I to stand between heroes and a mountain? Through you go. He hesitated, then added with conspirator's generosity, but the bazaar in Castletown sells a sturdy shield better suited for volcanic stones. Tell them Kakariko Gate Gondo sent you and they'll give a discount. He brightened. Also, there's a happy mask shop. My boy has been pestering me. This one? Naruto asked, already fishing in his pack. He produced a fox-faced mask with perked ears and bright eyes. Gondo clapped like a child. That's the one. You two are going to be legends, he said, eyes suspiciously wet as he turned the thing over in his hands. Through you go. And be careful. You're very welcome, Naruto said, and guided Link into the mountain's shadow. The path set its own rules. Rocks shifted where they pleased. The air grew thinner and hotter in small, sudden patches, like exhalations from a furnace below. A red Tektite took the path in a single arrogant hop and landed with a clack. Navi flared and hissed, Spider, slow, slashed the eye, and Link obliged, blade punching into the soft center. It came apart into a foul-smelling mist that made them both wrinkle their noses. They weren't far past that when a shadow moved on their right and became a shape that filled the path. The Goron blinked at them, head beeping a little as if he heard their bones creak. His skin was deep brownstone, his eyes glossy black, his belly round and proud. Visitors, he rumbled, pleased. I am of the Gorons, who eat the stone and sleep in warmth. Not many come up this way today. We heard there's trouble, Naruto said. We hope to help. The Goron tilted his head toward a lower slope, where a cave mouth had been stopped like a bottle with a great slab of rock. Dodongo's cavern, he said, voice lowering. Our pantry. Our training ground. Our stories. One day the Dodongos multiplied like a bad dream. Then a man in black armor from the desert came and sealed the mouth with magic and a stone no hand can move. He sighed, the sound rolling. We grow short-tempered when we grow short of food. Who wouldn't, Naruto said. He looked up. The mountain's flank was a knotted shoulder against the sky. We'll head to the city. Up and in, then, the Goron said. Not far. If you see my cousin, tell him to stop rolling in the hall. I know he likes it. I do not like being a ramp. Goron City was a bowl carved into heat and echo. The central shaft fell away for 5, 6 levels, ringed with paths and studded with doorways, the air full of a steady drumbeat that wasn't music so much as someone's need to keep their hands busy so they didn't punch the wall. Gorons rolled here and there, tucking themselves into living boulders to drop from one tier to another. A shop offered shields cut from the shells of ancient beasts and bomb pouches for hands strong enough to carry them. At one landing, a stone door bore the trisected gold crest of the royal family. Impa's song, Naruto said, with a nod toward Link's ocarina. Link stepped up, set his feet, and played Zelda's lullaby the way Impa had shown him. The first time, his breath rushed in the middle. He corrected it the second time, and on the third, the crest glowed a soft, approving gold and the heavy stone rumbled aside. Heat rolled out, scented with metal and dust. A throne of sorts sat on the far side of the room, really a flat shelf of rock with a skin laid on it, and a drum beside. On it crouched a Goron broader than the rest, arms corded, eyes half-lidded with a sulk so total it might as well have been meditation if not for the low, impatient scrape of his nails on the drumskin. Lord Darunia? Naruto asked. The Goron's head twitched. If you've come to sell me a stew flavored with promises, he said, throw it out. My people are hungry. My temper is hungry. Neither has room for thin soup. We came to help, Link said simply. Did you? Darunia said, unimpressed. His eyes flicked to the ocarina, to Link's small sword, to Naruto's hands. The royal song opened my door. Good. That means the princess remembers us when she is comfortable. That does not open rock. What would? Naruto asked. Darunia snorted and looked away, as if refusing to speak the word he wanted most would make wanting it hurt less. Food opens rock, he said at last, grudging. Bombs open rock. Courage opens rock when bombs and food are gone. He thumped the drum once. And music, sometimes, if it is the right kind. Naruto's eyes slanted toward Link's. He could hear Saria's hum in his own head, the way she had leaned on the rail above the village and let the tune wander because it already knew where it was going. Try this, he said, and whistled the fragment. Link frowned, then beeped his head, and tried it. The notes came shy at first, then found a path, then stuttered because the middle was missing. Darunia's expression did not change. If anything, his sulk deepened. No, he said, with great and terrible patience. That is almost a song. And almost is what my people have had for a month. Then we'll go ask the person who knows it, Naruto said, without pride, without defensiveness, as if stubbornness were a simple tool he kept with his rope. Wait for us. Don't break the mountain while we're gone. Darunia stared at them, and for a heartbeat the sulk bent. If you bring me a dance, he said grudgingly, I will bring you a bracelet so you can carry bomb flowers like a proper Goron. Done, Naruto said. They didn't linger. There were errands a person did on the way back through a place, and ones that could wait until the way forward was secured. They paused only long enough at the shop for Naruto to eye the price of a bomb bag and decide that discounts were not yet their destiny. The mountain spat them back into sunlight. The field had shifted to afternoon. They skirted the worst of the heat on the road and made Hyrule's gate as the shadows stretched long. Melon waved from her father's cart as they rattled into the square, Epona's white blaze popped up like a question mark and then vanished with a joyful toss of her head. The guards had already heard about a man who gave away masks at the gate, and were inclined to treat the two with indulgent fondness. That got them through faster. By dusk, they were standing under the great rib of the fallen tree again, and the forest took them the way a friend takes your hand without needing to say why. Saria was waiting at the sacred meadow, because of course she was. She always seemed to be where her presence would be most like the right kind of medicine. The place carried its own hush. Stone walls shouldered in close and then backed away, shaping a path that felt more discovered than built. The wind moved in loops overhead. "You came back," Saria said, relief and certainty braided together. "We need a song," Naruto said. "The one you hum when the day sits right. The one that smells like moss." Saria's eyebrow went up. "You make music sound like soup," she teased gently, and then she took the ocarina from Link's hands and played. Some tunes instruct. Some bless. Saria's made something warm loosen in the chest and travel to the feet, made the head want to tilt, made the hips consider the possibility of rhythm. Link watched her fingers carefully, then closed his eyes and tried it. The second time, his breath stopped in the right places. The third time, he smiled without knowing he was doing it. "There," Saria said. "Carry that to anyone who's forgotten how to smile." Naruto didn't trust himself to speak for a second. He reached out and squeezed her hand instead. She squeezed back and nodded toward the path. "Go on," she said, and then gentled the command. "And come back when you can. There are more songs." They didn't sleep in the forest that night. The meadow held good dreams, and good dreams would slow them. They went under stars and woke the field with their footsteps and made the mountain by mid-morning. The gate guard with the mask waved them through with the pride of a man who had made friends with heroes. The trail, like all trails, seemed shorter when the feet remembered it. Goron City felt more brittle for lack of cheer, but the big stone door opened again to the royal song without making them ask twice. Darunia still crouched on his shelf, still thumping mood into his drum. Link lifted the ocarina and let Saria's song tumble into the room. It didn't so much echo as bloom. The first bar straightened Darunia's spine. The second made his foot twitch where it rested on the floor. By the third, he was up, and by the fourth the Lord of the Gorons was dancing like a boulder had decided to go jaunty, and rolled with perfect grace. He whooped, loud and free, and his laugh bounced off the stone in big, pleased waves. "Now that," he said when the last note faded, "is a song. That is a song that tastes like a good hot stone after a bad week." He clapped Link on the shoulder with a hand like a friendly avalanche and grinned at Naruto. "You brought me a dance. I promise you a gift." He held out a thick metal band shaped to curve around a forearm. The thing was heavy even to look at. "A Goron's bracelet," he said. "Wear it, and your hands will know how to grip balm flowers without burning. Go to the cavern mouth. Pull the blooms. Feed them to the rock like you would feed a friend." He sobered. "There are dodongos enough down there to make a story. Make sure it ends with my people eating and not being eaten." "We will," Link said. "Also," Darunia added, wagging a finger that looked like it could flick a cow into next week, "if you find my younger cousin rolling near the city's lower level while screaming about speed, tell him I said he can be fast later." "We'll pin him for you," Naruto said, perfectly straight-faced. They climbed toward the cavern mouth first to see the work ahead of them, stood at the lip of the blocked entrance, and listened to their stomachs make steady arguments about lunch and duty. And then Link pointed up toward the smoking cap of the mountain, eyes narrowed against the brightness. Navi said there was a fairy at the top. "Blessing first," Naruto agreed. "Then rock breaking." The last stretch was mean. The path broke into black glass and rubble, and the mountain threw stones like a bored giant flicking pebbles. Link learned very quickly that a small shield meant for Kokiri games rang like a bell when a rock glanced off it, and that ringing hands made bad grips. Naruto took the larger stones on his forearms and let his feet do the work. They reached a little plateau where the air thinned to a knife and a stone wall looked less like a wall and more like a scraped scab. Someone, Probably many someones over many years had carved the royal crest into the stone. Impa's lullaby, Naruto reminded, and Link played. Magic tugged. The walls softened and opened like a held breath exhaled. Inside, the world cooled and went dim. A fountain bubbled from a spring that knew how to find itself even in fire. When Link stepped forward, light rose from the water and became a woman made of the shine itself, laughter in her eyes. Her hair spilled like liquid glass. Her smile held the self-satisfaction of a creature who knew she was beautiful and also right. "Child brave enough to climb," she said, amused approval in every syllable. "You carry courage like it belongs to you. Take a gift." She touched 2 fingers to Link's brow. Warmth flooded his limbs. The weight of his little sword suddenly made a different kind of sense to his hands. "Circle your blade when foes crowd you and let your spirit finish the swing." She turned her head toward Naruto, narrowed her eyes playfully, and flicked a bit of water at him. It struck his chest and sank through as if his shirt weren't there. "You are already full of tricks, little fox," she said. "Have a small one from me. Your wind will steal a touch less from your lungs." "Thank you," Naruto said, the words more formal than his usual habit because it felt right here. "Come back when the mountain has a better mood," the fairy said, and dissolved into 1,000 small, delighted laughs. They let their breaths even out in the cool and then went back into the glare. The path down was worse for being downhill, but they took it with the steadiness that learning gives. The balm flowers grew in tight clusters near the cavern's mouth, fat buds heavy with potential. Link reached for one, hesitated, then slid his fingers under the stem with a grip that felt suddenly right, felt like something his hands had always been able to do and had only just remembered. He hefted the bloom, its fuse already hissing, and Naruto yanked his head toward the boulder. "Now," Naruto said. Link threw. The flower arced, landed at the slab's base, and went off with a clean, deep thump. Dust boiled. When it cleared, the mouth gaped like a pulled tooth. A breath of hot, stale air came out that smelled of lizards and old battles. Link rolled his shoulders. Naruto spat once to the side in a small, practical superstition he picked up from a stone mason in Castle Town. "Eat first?" Naruto asked. "After," Link said. His eyes were steady, his hands sure. "Before I can think too much." "Good," Naruto said. "We'll think later. We'll tell jokes later. Now we make the world quieter in there." Navi's light bobbed, ready and a little anxious. "Lots of dodongos," she warned. "Big ones? They don't like noise. Or being stabbed." "Noted," Naruto said. He drew in one long, even breath and let the mountain's heat settle into his bones where it could be useful, then glanced at Link. "You start. I'll be where you need me." Link nodded, a quick, clean thing, and together they stepped into the shadowed mouth of Dodongo's cavern, the music of the mountain beating under their feet and a princess's song sitting steady in the back of their minds like a promise they meant to keep. The mountain's breath rolled hot from the newly blasted mouth of Dodongo's cavern. Ash and the metallic taste of old battles clung to the air, heat pulsed in slow, furnace-thick waves. Link flexed his fingers around the small kokiri blade and set his feet. Naruto drew one steadying breath and let it out, letting his body take the measure of the place. Echoes, drafts, the faintest shudder in the stone underfoot like a heartbeat far below. "Lots of dodongos," Navi warned, voice a clear chime in the heat. "They don't like noise. And they explode when they die, so." Backstep after the hit, Naruto finished, mouth quirking. "Got it." They stepped inside. The entry chamber was a wide bowl, floor split by long cooling cracks, the center dominated by a gargantuan stone skull whose empty eye sockets stared down like eclipsed suns. Ancient Gorin carvings studded the walls, spirals, hands, stylized flames. Torch brackets ringed the room, half of them dead, the others guttering low with orange tongues. Abimo's tower, an old Sheikah design long since stolen by darker hands, slewed its single green eye as it searched, then spat a needle-thin beam that hissed against rock. Link Dove, rolled, came up small behind a broken column. Naruto slid left, snapped a kunai to his fingers, and palmed it toward the Bimos' metal base. The ricochet caught a loose bomb flower bud lying in a tangle of vine unlit fuse scraping along the column. Link's gaze tracked it, calculating. He darted out, snatched the bud, struck the fuse against the stone skull's jaw, and lobbed the sputtering bloom in a clean arc that dropped it beside the Bimos' heavy base. It went off with a contained, satisfying thump. The Bimos squealed, whirred, and fell to the side with a sound like an old kettle dying. Silence rushed in for a heartbeat. "Nice throw," Naruto said. "Good angle," Link answered, and a small grin tugged up one corner of his mouth. They circled the skull. A crawl space yawned behind the left tooth, a cracked wall sulked behind the right. The ceiling, blackened by smoke from a dozen old fires, glittered here and there with mineral veining where the rock had wept and cooled. Navi bobbed near the left gap, peering. "Short tunnel," she said. "Smells like dust and old lizards." "That's all of them," Naruto murmured. "Let's wake them up ourselves, on our terms." He nodded at the cracked wall. Link lifted another bomb flower with his newly gifted Gorin grip and placed it like an offering. Rock dust bit their throats as the charge took. When the smoke cleared, a corridor sloped down, studded with more fossil dark skulls and flanked by niches where baby Dodongos lay half asleep, pink-lipped mouths opening and closing as if dreaming of fire. They didn't stay sleeping long. Something about the tremor of the explosion or the tang of fresh air pulled them up like weeds. Little bodies scuttled forward. Link set himself. Naruto crouched slightly, weight low. "Breathe," Naruto said. "Let them overrun a place that doesn't matter." Link drew the small blade in a short circle and let them come. One opened its mouth to hiss and swallowed the point, a neat stab that pushed through palate and brain. Link kicked the little body away as he withdrew the blade. 3 steps, then heat blossomed in a bass thump where the little corpse detonated. The shock wave rolled his tunic but didn't take his legs. Navi flitted to Naruto's shoulder, the light she shed turning very briefly a cool blue. "Left," she warned, and Naruto moved before the word finished, heel down in a sweeping cut that caught the next hatchling under the jaw. It snapped once, then sagged, then popped with a hot cough. He flowed out of the blast zone without looking, all muscle memory and battlefield math. They progressed, the rhythm quick and mean. The corridor ended at a low pit where lava oozed like a wound that had decided never to close. Rope bridges crossed an AV. A platform for archers jutted halfway up the far wall, now deserted. Across the pit, a heavy door lurked behind twin stone plates set into the floor, switches. Between here and there, a warren, ledges stacked like crooked teeth, patches of ground that tilted slightly if you looked at them too long, and the occasional Bimos hosting a constellation of burn marks and an invitation to try stupidity twice. Navi pinged when code felt needed. "Bimos, they rotate blind spot after firing, see the pause? Use it." Link watched, counted, and went. He sprinted at the last second of the rotation, slid under the metal eye like a boy diving under a fence, and came up in its backyard. A bomb flower waited. The last thing the Bimos saw was green light reflecting off metal and a boy's heels moving out of range. A chorus of keys, those miserable winged embers that called themselves bats, fell from a ceiling crack like burnt paper. They came for the softest light in the room. Navi dimmed, clever and quick. Link lifted his shield and whirled at once, smacked one keys out of the air and into the lava. Naruto didn't bother with steel. He blew a thin pulse of furor-honed wind, and the swarm staggered off course just long enough for Link to swat and stab the stragglers. They found the bomb bag in a chest ringed with cracked tiles, an architectural joke, as if daring them to open and plummet. Link crouched and peered. "To that crumble," he murmured. He angled the lid, slid the bag free, and lifted it off the plinth with the careful greed of a thief who intended to donate the loot to a better cause. With real bombs in hand, their options multiplied. The skull's left eye, when fed a bomb, belched smoke and sneezed a stone slab out of alignment. They fed the right eye, and the skull's lower jaw rattled down, revealing a ramp cut into its tongue. "Morbid," Naruto observed, and grinned. Gorin jokes, Navi said. They like the slow ones. The ramp took them into warmer dark, where the stone trembled faintly underfoot. They skirted a low lava lake as broad as a town square. The far wall was a palisade of black teeth. In its center, a double door of really old work, hard angles, no decoration, a violence to the joinery stood slightly ajar. Link's eyes lifted to the alcoves above the door. Two lizard shapes lounged there, shadows moved before the bodies did. Lizalfos. Their tails tapped stone with bored arrogance. One sniffed, jerked its head down, and saw them. Now, Naruto corrected. The lizards came down laughing, ridged heads high, swords coming up lazy and then not lazy at all as they closed. Link met the first cut with his little shield and felt it ring down his arm with a force that would have unseated him 3 months ago. He let that force take his step back, then used the rebound to drive his blade toward the gap under the lizard's armpit. It twisted and the cut took scales, not muscle. The second went for Naruto in a lateral slash. He ducked, let the sword sing over the hair on his neck, and hammered a heel into a knee joint. Something gave, the Lizalfos hissed, pivoted off the bad leg, and drove its shoulder like a battering ram. Naruto took it, rolled with it, came up inside the lizard's guard, and tapped 2 fingers to its ribs. Not a killing blow, just enough lightning to convince a heart to stutter. Link's lizard overreached, and the Kokiri blade flicked in like a striking viper. Steel went through the thin space between throat scales and a thick, ugly slide. The Lizalfos thrashed, kicked Link's shin hard enough to bruise, and fell back into the lava with a hiss that smelled like burned snake and copper coins. The other recovered from the lightning dazzle and looked up to find Naruto's heel coming down. Stone-hard skull met bone-hard strike. It wobbled, snarled, and managed one last stab that snagged Naruto's sleeve and tore the cloth without tasting blood. Link stepped in and cut the tendon just behind the elbow. The sword fell, and with it the fight. They breathed. Navi hovered glow soft. Link wiped his blade on his tunic hem with more care than ceremony. Good, Naruto said, simple and warm, and Link's mouth twitched again. The doors groaned wider. Beyond them, a round chamber sloped slightly toward a central vent. Heat roared up from the breach in rhythmic bellows. The rock's color changed where it drew near the hole from dark iron to sick yellow-green. The smell made instincts shrink back, old poison, bad breath from a long throat. Link stood at the rim and looked down into a throat full of fire. The floor shook, and something enormous rolled under the stone, gathering momentum. The vent belched flame like a thrown cloak. The floor split. And from the gap hauled itself a creature like a mountain had decided to stand on 4 legs, King Dodongo. Its eyes opened like wounds healing the wrong direction. Its jaw worked once, twice. It took one huge step, floor plates sunk a finger's width under its weight and inhaled. Bomb, Naruto said. Link already had one in his hand. He flicked the fuse against his bracer and held for a 1-2-3 that his body would remember in dreams later, then cast it into the black mouth just as the king began to summon its first gout of fire. The bomb disappeared down the gullet. The king froze, eyes trembling. It made an awful, rising sound, rage or fear, some fusion beyond words, and then it detonated. The blast thudded Link's ribs. The king reeled, jaw jerking. It staggered sideways, hissing. The plates under its feet glowed dull red for a beat where something inside it vented heat too fast. Again, Naruto said, but he didn't need to. Link was already lighting the next bomb. The king learned, as kings do, and about as quickly. The second throw, the monstrous head jerked to bat the bomb aside with the tusk. It rolled to the rim, and went off in a harmless burp of dust and heat. The king dodged into the lull and breathed his own answer, a huge, rolling plume of fire that roared low along the floor. Link jumped for the nearest safe pillar. Naruto lifted both hands and snapped a cross breeze of Furor's gift that shouldered the flame's leading edge enough to give Link a breath of safe air. The king plowed past, slowed by its own bulk and the room's curve. Link jumped down, legs hot with exertion, and chased. He lit bomb 3 on the run and sprinted until he was almost at the rising hinge of the lower jaw. The first spark of flame built behind the teeth. Link threw high, and this time the bomb glanced the tusk and bounced inward. The king clamped down on reflex, as if to bite, and trapped the lit charge inside. It went off with a meaty internal thump. The king's eyes went wide and blank for a beat. Link took the opening and slammed his blade against the corner of the jaw hinge where softer cartilage lurked beneath the iron flesh. The Kokiri weapon wasn't ideal, but 3 quick hacks, each set up by the last, sank enough steel to draw a gush of dark blood. The king screamed. It stumbled backward and misjudged the rim of the central vent. Its forefoot went out into nothing. The rest followed, pulled by weight and bad luck. For a moment that stretched and snapped. Then gravity reminded it of its age. It tipped, slid, and vanished into the fire below. The roar that chased it up was half volcano, half dying thing. The blast that followed was hotter and whiter than anything that had touched the room all day. Link threw himself to the ground as scalding air rushed over the rim. Naruto flattened and let wind fold around him like a quick, invisible shield. Then quiet. A stone elevator rose from a ring around the vent's edge. They stepped on it and let it carry them up into a chamber that had not seen strangers in 10 years. Waiting there, standing as if he had been listening through the stone the whole time, was Darunia. He looked better. The sulk had gone. In its place stood a pride too big to be brittle. He clapped, one heavy clap that echoed and pleased. "You danced with my people's fear," Darunia said. "And you made it sit down. That is a good dance." Link bowed. Naruto did too. Darunia thumped the drum he had brought without seeming to carry it, and a chest rumbled up from the floor as if it had always been a possibility, and simply hadn't been asked before. Inside, set on black velvet like a star caught and made polite, lay the Goron's ruby, deep red, facets catching the light in ways that made the eye want to follow the edges forever. "Take it," Darunia said. "Eat well when you can. Sing when you can't." He grinned suddenly, all teeth and kindness. "And by the way, small hero, and you, Outlander, by the old ways you are my sworn brothers now. That means feast when there are feasts and fists when there are fists." "Understood," Naruto said solemnly. "We'll bring our own appetites." Darunia laughed so hard he wiped his eyes. "Go. There is another stone yet. The river doesn't like to wait." The path to the Zoras began where mountain shadow gave way to a long, patient river. Willows leaned over the water there. Frogs kept time with voices that sounded like someone tapping glasses with a spoon. An old owl on a rock blinked once, slowly, as if he'd been trying to appear exactly when they arrived and was miffed to find himself on time. "Kipora ge Bora," Navi murmured, hovering. "He'll give you advice you already know, and then say it again upside down." The owl puffed. "Ahem. The river has rules," he intoned gravely. "It likes songs, and it likes gifts. If you are polite to both, it might let you keep your feet dry today." Link tipped his head. "Thank you," he said. "Also," the owl continued, "there's a shop downriver where a very honest man will overcharge you for beans that will become very useful 3 summers from now." He paused, then sighed. "You will not listen to me about those, and that is fine. The future is silly." He flapped twice and drifted off like a hat carried by a lazy wind. The river's path was less like a road and more like a series of suggestions. Threads of current pulled along certain banks. Flat stones leaned in the water at angles that dared the unwary to hop. Walls of dark earth loomed and then fell back again. They found a fallen log that made a bridge in a round depression in the bank below a cluster of bombable boulders. "Zelda's lullaby?" Naruto suggested. Link played, and the water near the depression brightened, as if remembering laughter. He dove. He didn't have the breath to go deep, not yet. He made it to the bottom of the pool, pressed both palms against the mud, and pushed up gasping, hair slicked to his forehead, eyes bright. The second time he went down a little farther, and the third time he came back with a stoppered bottle glinting in one hand. Inside, a letter curled like a sleeping fish. They cracked the wax on the bank and slid the paper out carefully. "Father, I am within Lord Jabu Jabu. I am not in danger. Annoyed, yes. Send someone brave who can carry a girl and does not faint at the sight of jellyfish. Naruto. Link blew out a breath that was half laugh, half are you kidding me? Naruto squinted at the signature and smiled to himself. It's useful when hostages do their own clerical work, he said. A series of small courtyards climbed behind a bombable barrier. Once the rocks were gone, water made a music that belonged to high places. A stone slab carved with Zora swirls guarded the next gate. Zelda's lullaby turned it obliging, rotating aside in a smooth circle like a mouth opening to laugh. Zora's domain was a blue dream folded into stone. Waterfalls stepped down in fan sheets. Bridges arched like quiet prayers. Pale blue-lit caves opened like the insides of shells. Zora's moved with the self-contained grace of creatures who had made efficiency into art. Slender bodies, mottled fins worn like shawls, faces as expressive as hands. At the top of the main hall, on a dais like the lip of a well, sat King Zora, a large and thoughtful figure whose patience had gained weight with him. His eyes were old. When Link and Naruto approached, he considered them with an attention that made them feel weighed and measured. Travelers, he said at last. Hard to Zora and polite to water. What do you ask? We brought a letter, Link said, producing the bottle. The king's fingers were clever for their size. He opened the bottle with a twist, read the note, and then went very still. He did not startle. He did not perform alarm. He breathed in. My daughter has made a decision, he said. She is an expert at that. Lord Jabu Jabu swallowed her? Naruto asked carefully. The king lifted one hand in a tender denial. He is ill, he said. When he is ill, he becomes capacious. It is not unknown for him to shelter someone and forget to let them out. Like a bad story, Link said before he could catch the words. The king's mouth moved like he wanted to smile and had decided to be a king instead. I do not have warriors to spare, he said. We lost 3 to the Undertow last season. And a 4th married a Hylian fisherman and is very happy, which is a worse loss when you are making a list. We'll go, Link said, a simple promise that called no attention to itself. Take this, the king said, and his hand dipped into a bowl no one else had seen. He dropped 3 silver scales into Link's palm. They were heavy and sang a little against one another. A gift from a mother for a child who needed to learn to stay under longer. You will breathe better with them in your pocket. He looked at Naruto then. You carry water differently. Be courteous to it. I will, Naruto said. The path to Lord Jabu Jabu's enclosure wound under a curtain of water that made everything on the far side look like it was remembering itself. A priest in white and blue nodded them through a gate. The Lord himself was huge. A catfish god dream. His massive head rose out of a pool the color of meltwater and old glass, whiskers trembling as if tasting the air. His eyes were almost human if you looked too long, not kind, not cruel, only interested. He did not open his mouth. Gift, Navi said, paw de doing in place. The river likes gifts. So do big fish. They bought a fish at the little side shop run by a Zora with an expression perfected for impatient children, and then set the wriggling thing in a shallow bowl near the enclosure's lip. The scent of it hit Lord Jabu Jabu like an idea. He opened his mouth, an enormous, slow yawn filled with the pink, glassy wetness of a cathedral, and breathed in. Water caught them and turned gravity sideways. They tumbled forward, Link with his limbs neat around him like a diver, Naruto a little looser, accepting the tumble as part of the way down, and then they were inside. It was warm and red and alive. The floor had give to it, springy as if the world had found out about trampolines. Slow peristaltic ripples traveled through the walls. Pockets of fluid sacs hung like chandeliers. Some burst if jostled, some cracked like eggs with a soft, wet sigh. The air smelled like salt and copper, bright and unpleasant, and between pulses of muffled thunder that had to be a heartbeat, Link could hear the whine of something electrical. Don't cut the walls, Navi said quickly. You'll make him angrier. Noted, Naruto murmured, already tuning himself to the way the room moved. The first hazard was weirdly adorable, shaboms, transparent bubbles that bounced and bobbed, looking harmless until they brushed skin and stung like nettles. Link poked one with his blade and got a crackle up his arm for his trouble. He hissed, shook his hand, and swatted instead with the flat pop, pop, pop until the passage cleared. They found Princess Naruto in a room shaped like a drop of water about to let go. She stood with her arms crossed and her chin up, ankle deep in a pool that rippled when the room made up its mind to breathe. She was older than Link by a year, maybe two. Bossy, beautiful in the way water can be beautiful when it's not doing you any favors, and glaring. "You took your time," she said. "We came as soon as we got your letter," Link said, serious. "We had to walk from a volcano." Naruto blinked. "I suppose that is adequate," she conceded. Her eyes flicked to Naruto, cataloging, then narrowed with interest at the way he stood so easily in a place that moved underfoot. "Are you his bodyguard?" she asked Link, tipping her head at Naruto without looking away from him. "He looks like one." "I'm Naruto," Naruto said, with the faintest bow. "We're here to get you out." "I dropped something," she said, as if that were sufficient explanation for being inside a god's stomach. And then the door decided it wanted to be a wall. And then the jellyfish came back. She scowled. "This is extremely inconvenient." "Come on," Link said gently. "We'll argue with the walls for you." Naruto stood in place a second longer, as if deciding whether she was being ordered or helped. Then she stepped onto the little island where they waited and allowed Link to boost her up onto a platform, which she accepted as if they'd planned it together rather than improvised it. The belly had rules, and the rules were wires. Thin cords of living tissue ran through the walls and ceiling, connecting organs to valves and valves to gates. At intervals, jellyfish, Bairi, drifted in lazy constellations, their trailing tendrils crackling faintly with bioelectricity. The keening whine they gave off set Link's teeth on edge. "Don't cut them in the water," Navi advised. "They like that." "Boomerang," Naruto said. "If we can find one." The belly obliged. In a chamber shaped like a lung, with two passages branching away like bronchioles, a chest waited on a ledge too high to climb. The floor rose and fell on a slow cycle. Link watched for 3 breaths, timed it, and jumped at the top of the rise. He caught the ledge with the very tips of his fingers, scrabbled, found purchase, and rolled onto the platform. Inside the chest lay the boomerang, carved of some pale, light wood, balanced perfectly for a child's hand, its edges banded with something that hummed when Link swung it lazily through the air. "Throw and call it back," Navi said. "Believe it'll listen." He did. It did. The first throw smacked a switch behind a membrane too tough to cut, and came singing back to his palm like a pet hawk. "Let's go make tentacles jealous," Naruto said cheerfully. They found them in a long vertical chamber, a coarse shaft for digestion with 3 great cords of living muscle descending from the ceiling to anchor heady, throbbing bulbs that fed the room's motions. The first tentacle lifted as if smelling them, then snapped down in a meaty lash that would have broken a rib if Link hadn't flattened. He didn't try to meet it with steel. He threw, instead, angling the boomerang's sweep to carry up and around the bulb where the tentacle joined. The weapon struck with a satisfying wet clunk. The tentacle spasmed. Link threw again and again, 6 clean strikes while the thing reset until the cord convulsed, tore, and whipped back into the ceiling. Somewhere below them, a door hissed open. "2 more," Navi said, grim. "He'll be happier without them, even if it hurts." "Sometimes healing hates you while you do it," Naruto said softly. They cut the second and third in a rhythm that became almost musical: throw, catch, duck, throw, pivot, catch. Each time, a door somewhere else agreed it hadn't meant to be a door all along, and tried to pretend it had merely taken a nap. Naruto watched with her arms crossed and a frankly admiring smugness that she didn't bother to hide. "We can get to the core," she declared when the last tentacle recoiled. "Follow me." She led them to a room that felt less like a room and more like a cathedral drunk on nerves. Light pulsed. The floor trembled continuously now, not in waves but in a constant, tiny jitter that made Link's calves ache. A platform rose at the center, ringed by a pit full of bile yellow fluid. Above hung a mass of something that wasn't flesh and wasn't stone, a cluster of plates, spikes, and pulsing sacs, all bound together by a terrible logic. Cables ran from it into the ceiling and walls, anchoring it to the great arteries of Lord Jabba Jabba's body. Remade. It stirred, the room brightened. A halo of Bairi spun to life around the central mass, tentacles of lightning arcing between them with a sound like bees under a bell jar. "Don't be in the middle of those," Navi said unnecessarily, but sometimes saying it helps anyway. The first exchange was all survival. The ring of jellyfish spun faster, bolts cracked the air and bit stone. Link kept his feet moving, never giving the same ground twice, throwing the boomerang only when a line opened. Naruto dropped low, hands flat for a heartbeat on the warm, living floor, and felt for the way the creature's weight tugged the room's motion. He found the rhythm and moved against it, slipping between arcs of electricity like a man walking between hanging sheets on a windy day. "Anchors first," Naruto called. Link pivoted and looked up. The thick cables that moored the parasite to the host, root causes. He angled the next throw high and the boomerang cracked into a cable with a thump that felt in his bones like the right place to hit. The cable quivered then sagged. Link threw again. Naruto clapped once and sent a breath of wind in with the weapon, adding a fraction to its travel, a nudge that changed a deflection into a strike. The first cable parted with a sound like a gnawed rope giving up. The parasite screamed, but something in the eyes stung and tears came unbidden. The jellyfish ring wobbled, began to move out of sync. Link took advantage and cut two of the Bairi with clean throws that left them stunned and easy prey for a quick boot snap to fling them into the bow pit. They fried the liquid in thick green crackles and died ugly. The ring shrank. The lightning web broke. "Again," Naruto said. "Top down. Make it carry its own weight." They cut the cables one by one. The parasite sagged toward the floor with each lost anchor, relying more on its own tentacles, pulling them in tight around its core. When the last cable failed, the thing dropped. The shock sent Link stumbling to one knee momentarily. Naruto's shoulder hit the rim of the bow pit and slid along, skin sizzling in a line that would raise a welt and a story later. Remade spun its remaining jellyfish like a flail. Link ducked and rolled under one, felt hair lift with the static thrum, and came up inside the ring. The boomerang whacked the last Bairi out of the air, and it landed near Naruto's boot. He towed it into the pit without looking. "Now it's only you," Link told the creature, out loud, because sometimes the world listened when you said simple truths. He stepped in and slashed at the pulsing sacs. They burst in sprays of sickly fluid that stank like spoiled medicine. The core flinched and revealed a seam, two plates almost but not quite meeting. Link drove his blade there, short, hard jabs, each one smaller than the last as the gap narrowed. The parasite tried to grab him with a tentacle, clumsy without its cables, and Naruto caught the limb in both hands and yanked, using the creature's momentum against it. He slid, boots squealing, then found traction and heaved. The tentacle tore, spraying. The creature screamed again, this time audible, a thin, desperate whine, and tried to flee upward. There was nowhere to go. Link set his jaw and stabbed until his shoulder burned and his hand shook, and the blade finally punched through to something that didn't give at all. The core spasmed once, like a heart trying to beat out of rhythm, and then it went still. Silence fell hard. The room dimmed. The tremor in the floor eased to the old slow rise and fall of a creature that had remembered who it was under the hurt. Ruto had braced herself against a rib of cartilage and watched the whole thing with furious, helpless interest. When the parasite sagged and lay dead, she pushed off and landed lightly near them. "You ruined my shoes," she said abruptly, and then smiled, sharp and delighted. "Thank you?" "Sorry about the mess," Naruto said, wiping off the edge of his sleeve and making a face. Ruto's gaze settled on Link first. "The stone belongs to my people," she said, formal again. "By our law it passes with duties, not affections, when it must." She looked at Naruto then, longer. "Affections are otherwise." Link blinked, not following. Naruto sighed, not without fondness. You can hold two truths, she said. We do it all day underwater. They made their way to the exit valve. Naruto pointed out the one that didn't lead into a culvert too small for humans, and the organ obligingly flexed. For a moment they were squeezed by flesh in motion. Then Lord Jabu Jabu coughed them into sunlight in a gout of clear water that smelled very briefly like minnows and relief. The priest scrambled to help them up. A dozen Zoras gathered with towels and the kind of quiet, hyper-specific competence that happens when a people have been helping each other out of the same pool for centuries. Naruto allowed two aunties to fuss over her, then shrugged free with grace and strode for the king. The audience that followed was short and full of looks more than words. Naruto stood before her father, chin high, and something unspoken passed between them that reminded Naruto of the moment a river rises and a boat rides it correctly. The king nodded slowly. Your stone, Naruto said, and turned to Link. In her hands, the Zora's sapphire was more than a gem. It was a piece of the river given a shape, a blue so deep it was almost a voice. I give this to you as my duty. We will call it a pledge because the law likes nice words. But mark me, it is not a betrothal. Link flushed, then controlled it, then flushed again because he was 14 and the world was being large at him. I'll keep it safe, he said, feeling both relieved and oddly honored by a responsibility he would have found overwhelming if offered in the other tone. Naruto's eyes returned to Naruto, and for the first time they softened, an angle rounding infinitesimally. As for affections, she repeated, calmer, almost amused. I am not a stone. I can decide where to set them. Later. She took a breath and let it out. After the world remembers how to be the way it should be. Naruto bowed, properly this time, because she'd earned it. I'll be here for the later, he said simply. Zora's domain returned to its business with the elegant efficiency of a beehive. The waterfall songs shifted key as Lord Jabu Jabu's pulse settled. A diver set out sashimi with the neatness of ritual. Children with fins like leaf sails played a game where they slipped through rings of light cast by holes in the stone. The king had attendants roll a table out onto the dais where the spray would keep the fruit cool. Eat, he said. We know better than to send heroes away empty. They did, gratefully. The fish was sweet and clean. The riverberries tasted like someone had bottled the color blue and politely added seeds. Navi hovered close, light warm. Every now and then her tone dipped, a faint sign of tiredness she would deny if asked. Link set the 3 stones in a line on the table for a moment, just to see what it looked like when the world made patterns. Green, red, blue. Forest, fire, water. Courage, strength, grace. Together, they looked inevitable. Temple of Time, Naruto said very softly. Door of Time. Ocarina. Link nodded. The weight in his pocket was real and important, and not heavy at all. He looked at Naruto and saw in his face the same mix of hunger and dread and steady longing, the way you can be eager to do the next awful necessary thing because at the end of it, if you're lucky, is a door that opens. Tomorrow, Link said. We go back tomorrow. Tonight, Naruto said, glancing toward the waterfall path and the way the sun made ladders of light through the spray, we rest. No one good ever saved a world on no sleep. Naruto tugged at a bracelet she hadn't been wearing before and looked away like she'd remembered it suddenly. You can sleep in the guest caverns, she said, casual as a yawn. The ones with the nicer mats. We appreciate it, Naruto said. Link nodded, already imagining what it would feel like to lay his head down and listen to water instead of fire or the hollow throb of a dying god. They turned to go, and the king lifted his hand. One more thing, he said. They paused. His eyes, old and patient, had softened a fraction. The desert is not empty, he said. It is full of routes and rules. There is a woman there who knows both. When the time comes, you will need her. She will teach you to walk on sand without leaving too many footprints. Naruto thought of a laugh like a handful of bright coins, a scarf whipping in hot wind, eyes that weighed gold like information. We'll find her, he said quietly. Be found, the king corrected. It's Kinder. They slept in caverns where the walls breathed cool. The mats were firm and the pillows smelled faintly of clean scales. Link fell asleep with one hand on his ocarina and the other 3/4 open, as if relaxed enough to let go of the sword and not so relaxed that he'd forget where he put it. Naruto dreamed of doors and wind and a field where 6 old echoes waited like stones set in a pattern he would see once and then always. Morning came like a glass of cold water. They stood once more at the threshold of the domain and bowed to the king. Naruto stood a step below his dais, watching them with that direct, evaluating stare she wielded like a spear and a smile she saved for when it would do the most good. "Try not to get swallowed by any more gods," Naruto said, and Naruto snorted. "I will make no such promises," she said. "But I will make sure there's a letter." Link laughed, a quick bright sound he didn't get to hear himself make often enough. He took the Zora's sapphire away, next to its red and green companions, and felt the low, certain hum of a machine clicking onto the next tooth of its gear. They crossed back under the waterfall's curtain. Sun flared, hot and honest. The field spread before them like a promise kept. Somewhere south, a ranch girl was teaching a foal to trust the sound of a song. Somewhere east, a woman in the desert woke already laughing at a problem that didn't know it had been solved last week. And in the castle's garden, a princess tuned a blue ocarina to a set of notes that could open a door that had been waiting a very long time for 3 stones and a breath held in the right way. "Ready?" Naruto asked. Link set his shoulders and nodded. "Ready." They started toward the Temple of Time with a bag of bombs, a boomerang that listened, and a trio of stones that had spent years pretending to be only beautiful. Above them, a hawk traced a lazy figure 8 in a clean blue sky. Ahead of them, a city hummed, unaware of how loud it was about to become. And behind them, in the water, Naruto stood very still and let her father's hand rest on her shoulder the way a current rests at the bend of a river, gathering itself for what comes next. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.